All right. Hi, everyone. Um, I'm just going to, let's see. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Come on in. We're just going to wait a few minutes to really get going. And I'm just kind of figuring out here what I need to do to, let's see, to start with this. I need to share my screen. So let me make sure that I've got that going. All right, we want to start this puppy from the beginning. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I think that we're up and running. So we'll have some more people popping in here, I think, as we go. But welcome. Hi, everyone. If I haven't met you, my name is Jenean Perelstein, and today we're going to talk about how to get out of your own way. We're going to talk about creating change in your life from a position of recognizing where you may be participating in self-sabotage. You know, many of us are leaving potential on the table, and we'll talk about some ways that happens, how it happens, why it happens, and then we'll talk about some strategies of getting past that. Because once you shine the light on when it happens in your life, that's when you can move beyond that and you can get out of your own way and then work towards creating change in your work and in your life and in a large by telling you a little bit about how I got started in this work and why I'm here today talking to you about this. About 20 years ago, my husband and I were traveling up to Flagstaff, where we live, from Phoenix late one rainy night. And we were discussing different people in our lives who all seemed to have different results. And they would have access to, you know, wealth, power, and prestige, equal access, but they didn't seem to get there as easily as we thought that they might, that they should. You know, I have to just pause for just a second because I've got a little bit of a distraction here with some noise just outside my office window. So if you could all just like hold tight for just a second, I'm going to pop away and address that and come right back. So, you know, 3, 2, 1. Okay, sorry about that. It's way better for me not to be distracted when I'm trying to tell the story, of course. So, okay. So, two different camps of people. And on one side, we saw people who had this access to wealth, power, and prestige, and they seemed to get in their own way. You know, they seemed to figure out that they would get 3 feet from gold, and then something would happen for them to sabotage, and they would blow it all up. Or, you know, for whatever reason, they get the girl, they didn't get the new clients or the new business or whatever it was that they were looking for. And then there's this other camp of people who would go out and they'd reach for something and they would get it, you know, without fail. They would always get what they were looking for. And that was really fascinating to us in this discussion. And we were looking at, you know, what is it that makes this group of people get in their own way? And what is it that makes this group of people like smooth over obstacles and actually have an easy time with it? So in that fascination, I thought, I'm going to look into this. And I really want to learn this language of success that these people are using. And I really want to keep myself out of this camp because I have big dreams for my life and I have big goals. Now, I'm really blessed. At the time, I was teaching sociocultural anthropology at Northern Arizona University. And I'm blessed with this discipline that teaches me not only cross-cultural comparison, but also the level of pattern recognition that was needed. Because as I brought on this body of research, I started looking in many different disciplines and in many different cultures. And what I found was that the keys to success were startlingly similar across these disciplines and across many different cultures. And that was very exciting for me. And so, I took this on as a hobby of mine. And I would love to tell you all today that I had this linear success, and that, I learned these rules of success, this language of success, and I just grew my life, and all is successful, and here I am today. But really, my path looked a lot like Billy's from Family Circus. If you remember, he couldn't get one thing done without hopping into many different little side channels, and that was really me, because I was doing this work sporadically, and sporadic efforts yield sporadic results. And so it was really big for me to finally get to this point where I took it seriously. I had, after a while, I was working as CEO of a regional youth nonprofit. And it was an interesting thing because I was doing great work, but somehow this fire that had been inside of me went out. And I got tired and I got sick, and people kept telling me, "Oh, Jenean, you have nonprofits disease. It's okay. You're supposed to be tired. You're supposed to be sick. You're saving the children of the world." But I thought, no, I think something bigger is wrong with me. And so I left that big girl job, and I dedicated myself full time to this body of research that I'd been collecting over the years. And I recognized then that I do have the answer here. And the more of these strategies that I tried in my own life, the better my life became. And at the time I was taking on marketing clients, helping people with their marketing plans and their businesses. And I thought, I'm doing this for myself. I'm going to help them with some of this inner game work. And I recognized that the more work I did with them on their inner game, the better their results on their marketing were. And that was exciting to me. And I finally got to a place where I realized I really have something here. That I'm getting great results, and my clients are getting great results, and I'm figuring out which strategies work and which strategies don't work. And I created a system, and I've replicated that system with hundreds of clients throughout the many years, and I want to share some of these strategies with you here today in hopes that you can adopt some of them into your lifestyle, and perhaps get out of your way and stand in your strength just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to share with you as much as I can in this limited time that we have, but I want to make the promise to you that if you're interested toward the end, I'm happy to share with you how many of my clients are taking this to the next level and really adopting it into their lives. So this is for you if you're tired of playing a small game. You're ready to play a bigger game. You know that there's more out there for you. You know that there's more potential that you need to reach. This is also for you if you've just been on the hamster wheel. If you feel like you're phoning it in, and you know that there's maybe more excitement and mojo. Kind of like how I was feeling in my job when I felt like that fire had gone out. And I thought, when people ask me, how am I? And I say, I'm fine. That's not good enough for me. And it's not good enough for you. And I want that for you. So let's get you off the hamster wheel. This is also for you if you have a tendency to procrastinate, or some other level of self-sabotage. It shows up in so many different ways. I work with some very high achievers. I actually had an executive in my office this morning who is an amazing woman doing amazing things. And every once in a while, procrastination shows up for her. And I see that as a sign of self-sabotage in ways that, that her brain is kind of making her get in her own way. And I'll share it with you in a little bit about why that happens. What's possible from this work is that you can get more of the right things done. You can have less activity in your life and more results. Naturally, people come to me and they are looking for freedom. And freedom comes in many different forms, just like abundance comes in many different forms. You know, some people think, oh, abundance, that means more money. You know, I'm not in it for the money, I'm in it for some other thing. And I just want to say that, you know, abundance to me means, and freedom falls into this too, means having plenty, you know, not just enough, but plenty of whatever it is that you're looking for. Now, at the time when I left my big job and dedicated myself to this, I needed abundance in my health and in my vitality, because I didn't have that. And so, you know, whatever abundance means to you, or whatever freedom means to you, does freedom mean that you would like to be free in making decisions, that you would like freedom over your time and over your schedule, maybe more freedom over your results, maybe freedom over your finances? That's absolutely, you know, while I'm, you know, discounting that abundance simply means money, I also want to bring it back in and say it absolutely can be about money. Because if you're feeling scarcity or lack in your life, I want to know what's coming up for you around that. See if we can't figure out a way to get you past that place so that you're standing in your strength with your finances, as well as your health and your relationships, and all of those things that create amazing results in your life. Because ultimately, we're in it for greater joy and self-satisfaction, aren't we? So I want to share with you where this kind of all started with me, not just my story of how it began for me, but one of the best things that I ever did in my lifetime was to travel extensively when I was younger. You know, I got to go to school in London and live and work in Bavaria, Germany. And throughout that time, I traveled quite a bit through India and the Middle East. And it's because of opening my eyes to the world that I fell in love with my home discipline of sociocultural anthropology. And I bring this up here because there are some concept pairs from anthropology that I want to share with you in beginning our journey to understand where it is that we do get in our own way. The first concept pair that I want to share with you is the difference between ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Ethnocentrism, well, actually, let me start with cultural relativism, because that's when we look at something different, you know, another culture, another way of being, another way of doing something. We see something different, we know that it's relative to that culture, and so we don't judge it. You know, we don't put our own personal judgments on them, because we know, hey, that's them, that's how they do it, and that's okay for them. That's cultural relativism. And I know so many of us here today are saying we fall into that camp. Yeah, absolutely. The other side of that is ethnocentrism. You know, this gal, if you can see the slides in the bikini, says, everything covered but her eyes, what a cruel male-dominated culture. And then, of course, the woman in full burqa believes nothing covered but her eyes, what a cruel male-dominated culture. And each of these women are being ethnocentric in that they are judging somebody else and the way that that the other person is doing things based on what is right in their own belief system and in their own culture. And it's an interesting concept, this idea of ethnocentrism, because what we judge to be wrong or not as right or righteous, even in our own culture, what we deem to be morally superior can sometimes hold us back. Because, let me be clear about this, if you want new outcomes in your life, you're going to have to have these new results are going to mean that you're going to be doing things differently. And in order to do things differently, you're going to have to create a whole new set of beliefs. You're going to challenge your beliefs that have created the results in your life that you have today. I'll go deeper in just a little bit about why that happens. But the key right now is to notice when it happens, because that is so very important as we step into achieving higher results in our life. Many of us say, oh, I don't judge. I don't have this. I'm culturally relative all the time. And I'd like to say the same thing. But in fact, I know that I come up with instances that really rankle with me. For instance, it's okay in many cultures to eat dog meat. And I know that's gross. Let me change it and I'll keep talking. And the reason why I find that so intolerable, I really cannot manage that is, this reason right here, this my own beloved puppy girl. And she's so precious and she's so sweet to me that I can't imagine. I end up judging these cultures that eat dog meat. And, even though this doesn't have anything, per se to do with my professional development, it is important for me to recognize that I like to be the kind of person, gosh, I'm an anthropologist, that I don't judge. I don't have things that hold me to my moral superiority in my culture. But the fact is that we do, and they're not, this one can be obvious. This one is pretty easy to see, this idea of animals as pets or animals as food. But it's a judgment and it affects my behavior. And that right there is what's super important for us to understand, because just as there's this one that was hidden not so far beneath the surface, I guarantee there are other ones that are hidden, sometimes deeper down beneath the surface, that do affect the way that you behave, that could actually be holding you back. I love this cartoon. The man at the desk says, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Of course, this comes from an Albert Einstein quote. You think about this, if this were a school scenario, this poor penguin or this poor goldfish would believe that they were incapable, or they would believe that they weren't good enough, or whatever it is that happens to us. And this is where it starts. People tell us what is right within the rules of our culture, within the rules of our society, within the rules of our family, or even within the rules of our workplace. That people will tell us what is right based on their values and their rules. And we start to develop a level of beliefs about ourselves, about what's possible for us based on those rules. And sometimes those beliefs aren't necessarily true, and they will cause more damage in us reaching new results than they do in propelling us forward. The next concept pair I'd like to talk with you about is the difference between the emic perspective and the edic perspective. Now, the edic perspective is an outsider's perspective. And this is when you see something from the lens of your own culture. You can see an outsider's culture because you know that it looks different or it behaves different. And it's easy to see because there's that contrast there. Have you ever been in a scenario where you have your own issues coming up and somebody else can see it so very clearly for you? But you weren't able to see it. And their insight was so valuable because of that contrast for them, because it was so easy to see. This is the edic perspective. And this helps us in understanding, this is what makes it easy for us to know that in our country and in our culture, I'm a daughter of American culture, and I understand that coffee shops are likely to look like something like this, but that in other places in the world, coffee shops might look like this. This is an easy thing to see from an edic perspective because the contrast is so high. Likewise, you might do laundry and washing machines that look something like this, whereas other places in the world, laundry day looks something like this. Again, it's fairly easy to see. Contrary to that, though, is the emic perspective, and that's the insider's perspective. The insider's perspective is also very valuable. For instance, if I go into a new company and I'm looking at their culture change, as I do. I look at their workplace culture and where they might need to adopt maybe a new merged in company's culture, or change their culture to be more productive, or to overcome turnover, something like that. It's going to be very valuable for me to have an insider's perspective. I'm going to need to learn from the people who live within that culture. But there's something very limiting about that, and that's in the view. So if I were to say, what is it that you see in your field of vision right now? From where you are. And you might say, well, I see a computer in front of me. I see you speaking to me. I see some names. I see a slide with glasses and some woods on it. Whatever's in your field of vision beyond that. And we could go through this for a good long time before any of you might bring up the idea that you can all see your noses on the ends of your faces, barring some birth defect or horrible accident. We can typically see our own noses all the time. But what our brains do for us is that they filter out the usual, and they make the usual hard to recognize. And so the emic perspective is very limiting because it is so usual. And it's not just the things that are in our sight, but there are things that are in our behavioral patterns and in the things that create the results that we have in our life. And so the reason why I'm talking to you today about the eidetic perspective and the emic perspective is that it's very valuable as you embark on a journey of change in your life to make sure that you have both, to make sure that somebody there is reflecting to you what they see and helping you draw out the things that are so normal for you that you can't see, even though your perspective is valuable as well. So I want to take you on this journey inside and do as Maria von Trapp does and start at the very beginning, because it turns out it really is a very good place to start. Many people embark on a journey of change and, they'll look far ahead, which I think is a good thing too. You want to know where you're going. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. That's very important. But people will say, okay, I'm going over here because that's where my goal is. Ready, go. But they don't have a very clear understanding of where they're starting from today. And it's that place that they begin from, that very good place to start. Understanding if you have results in your life, you have outcomes in your life, it's because you've been behaving in a certain way. Let's look at what that is. So I ask my clients in the very beginning to do an inventory. What are your behaviors? What are your beliefs? What are your attitudes? And what are your values about many different areas of your life? I want you to do this inventory of the way that you look at your finances and your career path and your beliefs about work. I want you to do it about your physical body, the way you feel about how you move through the world. I'd like you to have a good look at your relationships, your romantic relationships, your familial relationships, also your coworkers and other people that show up in your life. And then also, what are your attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, and values about your spiritual self and what's possible for you, not just in a larger religious or spiritual realm, but also in a personal and professional development realm. Make sure that you understand your beliefs around what is possible for you and what is not possible for you, perhaps based on what you've been told in the past. Maybe you had a teacher telling you to climb a tree and you had limitations for that. We got to know about that in order to move forward in your life. Hang on just a moment while I take a sip of water. All right. So this journey, the piece of the journey, begins actually about 20 years ago in Bethesda, Maryland, at the National Institutes of Health. There was a tremendous amount of research going on surrounding the idea that brain scientists, neuroscientists wanted to know what is happening in your brain at the exact moment that you're making a decision. When you're going through the decision-making process, what's happening in your brain at that time? And what they learned was, in studies that were replicated over and over and over again, was that about 20% of the decision-making process was being filtered through your rational brain, your logical brain. So, many people thought at the time, wow, then the other 80% must mean that we are irrational beings. And, that's not really where they got to. That's not totally true. But what they did find out was that the other 80% of the decision-making process that wasn't being filtered through rational thought was actually being filtered through our emotions. And this is very valuable information to me. At the time, doing marketing research and fundraising for nonprofits, in that I understood then that when we can appeal to somebody on an emotional level, we can really change the course or the direction of their decision-making process. So very fascinating research, but that was 20 years ago. And we know more about brains today in the last, that we've learned in the last 20 years than we did in, the hundreds of years in the neurosciences leading up to that. And what we know today is that the breakdown really is no longer that 80-20, so much as there's a breakdown of 96 and 4%. And that's the difference between our subconscious minds and our conscious minds. We've got about 4% of capacity in our conscious minds. And this is the part of your brain that you're using right now to listen to me and to synthesize what I'm saying. And, it's kind of like your workaday world brain, which means that it's no slouch. You all are professionals here on this call. And I know that you all have done amazing things with your life. And you've done a lot with your conscious brain with 4% of the capacity. But the work that I do lies in the realm of the 96% master of the ship, your subconscious brain. And this is the realm of your beliefs. And, you can think of it as the conscious brain being the realm of your behaviors and the subconscious realm being the world of your beliefs. Now, your subconscious mind, its main role is to keep you safe. It wants to maximize pleasure for you and minimize pain. And pain, by the way, in terms of your subconscious mind, really is change. It can keep you safe by keeping things normal, because normal is what your brain can expect. Even if normal gives you bad results, it's expected results. And so that means it's safe. And your subconscious mind acts as a big filter, a giant filter that will only let what it deems is important into your consciousness. So remember, this is the same filter that tells you, what is usual doesn't get seen anymore because it's not important information. So this is the same filter that keeps you from paying attention to your nose on your face at all times. And this is where you go, yeah, okay, thanks, Jenean, stop bringing it up. I don't want to see the nose on my face. But, it'll go away again in a little bit because your brain doesn't need it. But the question then becomes, why do you filter what you do? So I want you to imagine right now that you're stranded on a desert island. I'm a child of the 70s, and so I love this analogy because I used to love Gilligan's Island, where everything on this island was opportunity and possibility for them. They wanted to have a big gala ball. Boom, all of a sudden they've got gown dresses and tuxedos. They just had everything on this island with them. So I want you to imagine that you're on an island where all of opportunity and all of possibility that you want in your life is on that island with you. And the things that will get you to the results that you want and that will get you to the goals that you need, whether it's people or ideas or items or books or trainings or whatever it is, all of that is available on that island. And finally, you get rescued. The rescue boat comes along, but you can only take on about 184 items with you. And the reason why I bring up this number is that when your subconscious brain filters information into your consciousness, scientists believe that at any given moment, we have input of about 2 million bits of information. Like 2 million bits of opportunity and possibility that can allow us to reach our goals are coming into our brains at any given time. But we're only consciously aware of about 186 bits. And so this analogy, I want you to think, now all of a sudden you get to take 186 things that will lead you to opportunity and will lead you to possibility, will lead you to your highest goals and dreams. The question becomes, why do you choose what you do? Why are you going to choose the items that you do and leave behind or filter out the other things? Because oftentimes we are filtering out things that will lead us to success because you haven't trained your brain to deem them important or to deem them as necessary. Well, the answer to the question of why it is that you filter what you do really lies in your beliefs, as I've mentioned before. And where do your beliefs come from? Well, they come from your culture. They are gifted to you by your family or your workplace or the teachers that you've had or the experiences that you've had. Your culture helps shape your beliefs. Right, wrong, or indifferent, this is where they come from. And I want to share with you some stories about how beliefs, instead of behaviors, really changed the outcomes for people that were in different businesses. The first business that I want to share with you is actually the business of prostitution, sex workers. Many years ago, I was hired by the MacArthur Foundation to do program evaluation for a non-governmental organization in India that was doing HIV prevention. And I showed up and they were throwing their hands up in the air and they were saying, you know what, Jenean, we are handing out hundreds of thousands of condoms in the marketplaces where the sex workers work. And we're still seeing HIV rise, incidence rise. And so I went down into the marketplace with my translator and I sat down and interviewed many of these sex workers. And it didn't take me long before I came up with some ideas of some pretty major barriers to change based on their beliefs. One young lady sat down with me and she says, "Oh, we don't understand how they expect us to swallow one of those nasty things every time we have sex." Ugh, right? I mean, so horrible that the belief that they had was that the way to protect themselves from sex was to swallow a rubber condom. So, these workers could say, change your behavior, use a condom, use a condom, use a condom. But their beliefs weren't allowing them to have a behavior that would make a difference in their outcome. Sure, some gastrointestinal distress might keep them safe, keep them from working on that any given day. But until they addressed the beliefs about how HIV was transmitted, also, we needed to have a good look at their beliefs about how they supported their children and, what their clients really expected from them in order to get paid so that they could pay their children. We had to address on this level, on not just the level of their behavior, but on the level of their beliefs of, again, what was possible for them, possible for the culture, and in adopting their changes for them. That's where real change ended up coming into play. Years later, I'm back in the United States and I'm doing some marketing research for a gentleman who was a massage therapist. And he was at a point in his business where his clientele had sort of dropped off through the years. And oh no, I'm getting a terrible feedback. I wonder if, whoops, hang on a second. I wonder if I can mute everybody. Or if you can mute yourselves. I kind of neglected to do that at the beginning. So sometimes that makes a difference. Anyhow, it seems like that feedback has gone away. So great, I'll keep going. So anyhow, this gentleman was experiencing a time in his business where clients were starting to drop off, and he was concerned that he was going to have to go get a job. and leave this beautiful entrepreneurial lifestyle that he had come to know and love. And so I was giving him strategies for client attraction, and nothing was really out of the box rocket science. He had let some old clients lapse. We could recapture them. There was some very real, fairly simple strategies that he could deploy to bring clients back into his practice. But I was showing up week after week, and he wasn't doing them. And finally, we started working on some of this inner game stuff, and I was able to pull at a thread for him that suggested that he had this deep fear. And he finally says to me, "You know what, Jenean, I'm worried that if I do the things that you're asking me to do, I'm going to have so many clients that I'm no longer going to have time with my family or with my kids or even by myself anymore." And so he was actually sabotaging efforts where in his conscious brain, he said, "I need more clients." But his subconscious brain was saying, no more clients. You're going to lose your lifestyle. I'm afraid of that kind of change. And it wasn't until we got to that level of belief that we could develop a strategy around it. And it wasn't until we recognized why he was self-sabotaging. Not just that he was, it was clear that he was, but that's how we got around it. And that's, again, on the level of the beliefs. Now, he, unlike the sex workers, he did have a belief that doing the things that we suggested would help. But he had other fears that were holding him back. And so that's an interesting thing to recognize, is that these limiting beliefs and areas of self-sabotage can come from any area of your life. And this is why, people who try to compartmentalize their work life and their home life end up getting themselves into trouble, because sometimes it's, a little piece of one that'll trickle into the other realm, or it goes from one way or the other. That informs the way that we behave, and therefore it informs our results. So unless you take that holistic approach of everything in your life, you may be missing areas of self-sabotage. So I want to ask you, what is it that you want? And really do a clear inventory of the things that you really want. And then I want you to think about, what are those hidden beliefs that are informing the things that you want? Have a good, strong look at the things that you believe that were maybe gifted to you by your culture from long ago, those beliefs that don't serve you. When my clients choose to work more deeply with me in my 6-month program, we spend a lot of time in this area, and we start recognizing that hidden beliefs can come up out of the blue from many different places. And that's why we need to take a holistic perspective and look in many different areas for these hidden beliefs. And then you're going to want to look for evidence that those beliefs are true. Because here's an interesting thing about the way that beliefs work in your brain, is that when you have a belief, your brain is going to look for evidence that that belief is always true. And then once your brain has that evidence that that belief is true, it's going to say, I'm going to compel you to behave in a way that keeps this belief being true, because you will always behave in accordance with your beliefs. Those two things are intrinsically tied. Yes, you can use willpower to break that tie between the two, but again, willpower is the realm of the 4% of your conscious brain. So in times of stress or distress, you will sink to the level of your beliefs, and that's when your beliefs will be informing your behaviors. And one of the interesting things about looking for evidence is that your brain will find evidence that your belief is true in your behavior. And this is where we get a big old feedback loop that's called a habit, is that your brain is going to check for whether or not this belief is still true for you. It's going to make you behave in a way that the belief is still true. And it's also going to use that behavior as evidence to keep that behavior true. This is where the confirmation bias comes in. And it's also the feedback loop that creates habits for ourselves. So if we want to change results in our lives, we need to break this feedback loop. We need to break these habits. And it's here where, when we do this work, that my clients start recognizing deep down that they have been leaving potential on the table. and that there is more out there for them, that they can move beyond, and they can reach new heights and reach new potentials. And that's where it gets really quite exciting for us. Another area where sabotage comes up for people, certainly for many of my clients, is in the fears that they have. And so I want you to think about some of the fears that you have, and do a quick inventory of whether or not these fears serve you or if they hold you back. You know, when we're born, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling are the only two fears that are hardwired into our nervous response, our nervous system. Every other fear that we have has been enculturated. It's been given to us. It's a belief that's been gifted to us by our culture around us. Our brains sometimes make up fears. But the exciting thing about fears is if they're holding you back, they could also propel you forward by questioning those beliefs and changing those beliefs. And it's in looking at fears that sometimes we see where we're sabotaging our own efforts. I had a client one time who came to me, and she was very miserable in her career. She was thinking she was going to have to change career paths, which would have been a very big thing for a doctor such as herself. But she was miserable, and she didn't know if it was a fear of failure or a fear of success. But she had some regrets about this business that she had built through the years that didn't serve her. She didn't like the clients that she had, the patients that she had attracted to her business. She ended up with a whole slew of jackasses, actually, that she didn't like working with. And she blamed her profession for that. Pardon me. And when we began to work more closely together, we recognized that she was raised in a male family, very powerful businessmen in her family. Her father and her brothers were extremely successful, and they sort of taught her the language of business. And she built her business around what she learned, what she believed to be true about how to build a successful business from her male counterparts. And in doing so, she developed marketing materials that were completely inauthentic to her own more feminine voice. And in fact, much of what she built was built around language that was very male-dominated, very aggressive comparatively to her authentic self. And so she was attracting the kinds of clients that her brothers would have loved to attract, or her dad would love to attract. But she wasn't attracting the kind of heart-centered, compassionate clients that she really wanted to attract, because she was afraid that if she put herself out into her business authentically, that she wouldn't be successful. So it wasn't until we looked at beliefs about what success meant that we could get to this fear of success and fear of failure and fear of being authentic. And when we did that and we recreated new beliefs for her, and then created strategy that followed up those beliefs, that we were able to create for her a business that she loved. She didn't need to leave her profession after all. She simply needed to step into her own strength and into her own power and believe that she was enough and she was deserving. And these are many of the things that my clients often struggle with, is ideas of feeling like they are enough. And when they do step into their power and their strength as their authentic selves, and I want to champion this for you too, that when you do this, that's when you build businesses that you love, lives that you love, outcomes that are more suited for you and not for the shoulds in your life. So I want to suggest that maybe it's time for you to tell a new story. You know, perhaps some of the stories that you've told yourself before don't serve you, and maybe are based on fears that are gifted to you. I say that gift in quotes, gifted to you by other people that really aren't yours. That it's time now to create the results that you have based on a new set of beliefs and a new set of behaviors that are informed by those new beliefs. I want to leave you, though, with kind of a cautionary tale about change. Many people make a decision to embark on a journey of change because they're interested in change. And, I want to say that if this is you, that if you're interested in change, let me bless and release you and say, perhaps this isn't the right time. Because what I've learned through the years is that in order to really step into a place of change, you can't be just interested. You need to be committed. Because what happens, remember we talked about your brain looking for evidence, is that your brain is going to use any attempt at change when you're just interested in it. When you're just kind of stepping into this idea of change because it might work for you, but not committed, you will sink to the level of your previous beliefs, and you'll provide your brain with more evidence of why it won't work. I can't tell you how many times I dipped my toe into the pool of change, saying, I think maybe, possibly, passively, I'd like to try change. And then I had more, and then I failed, of course, right? And then I had more evidence that I couldn't do it. And then it would feed a story that would peel away at this veneer of confidence that I would otherwise have, that said, oh, well, duh, of course I can't do it, or I'm not the type of person that can do it, or I can't really change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. These kinds of things, these kinds of stories that are really just mistaken beliefs. They're really just messages. So if you're the kind of person who is interested in change, maybe think about the fact that this might not be the right time for you. But if you start feeling that fire in your belly, then step into a place of being committed to change, because it's from that place of commitment that real change lies. And it's with that I really want to share with you. We've talked a lot today about how to recognize when you're getting in your own way and some of the tools to help getting you out of your own way. But I'd like to position that for you within the larger scope of transformation that happens. When I work more closely with clients and take them through a longer stage of transformation, I'd like to share some of the modules that we go through that are necessary, absolutely necessary, to get from point A to point B, in addition to some of the stuff that we've talked about today. And it starts with, much of what we were going over today, like I was saying, that you do have to figure out where you are starting from. To embark on a program of change and to just take off toward your goal causes many people to trip over themselves, 30 yards from the starting line, because they haven't addressed why it is that they were getting in their own way in the first place. Why do they even have the results that they have in the first place? Now, I want to just address the idea that this is not contemplating your navel and going back to the painful events of your childhood. Sometimes that's a piece of it. Sometimes that's necessary, but unlike therapy, this is about looking at your results and exactly why it is that you're getting your results, and figuring out ways to rewire your brain for the next level of success for you. Another module is about gaining clarity on exactly what your goals are, exactly what your passion is, exactly what your purpose is, what your mission in life is. And I call this Finding Your Lighthouse. This is the title of the book that I've written, Finding Your Lighthouse, A Leadership Guide to Navigating Change. Because many people decide, again, they decide where they're going, and they immediately start on a path to get there. And, 6, 7 steps down that path, some external factor will throw them off that path, always, always. You know, it'll be an illness or an angry client or bad weather, or, you know, it shows up in so many different ways that either slows you down or knocks you off that path. And it's up to each of us to know how to get back on the path, not just where we're going, but how to get back in motion. And that is so incredibly valuable that unless you have those tools of getting back in the game, knowing why you got off the path in the first place and knowing where you're headed and gaining absolute clarity on where you're going and why you're going there. These are the keys to success, and you can't get there without them. And then, as I've alluded to before, you need to know the ways to attract new success into your life. And in my world, this means rewiring your brain for success. You know, there are synapses right now in your brain that are correlated with hidden beliefs that are holding you back. And what I want for you is new neural connections. I want you to let those old ones atrophy, and I want to help you build new neural connections that do serve you and do serve the level of success that you can have in your life. And then finally, I want to look at your life holistically. We talked about this early on. You know, I recognized when I first started working with people in this type of work that many people knew how to bring success into their life only to see it just slip through their fingers. And they would lose love again, or they would lose business again, or they would lose finances again or something, because I realized they weren't being welcoming of the abundance that they had when they had it. It's like having a guest come in, but you're not totally welcoming of them. They're going to leave. And success does the same thing. It's why I entitled my very first program, The Welcoming Abundance Blueprint, because I wanted to take a very complete look at your entire lifestyle, because there are many places that sabotage comes up, even after you've done the work of looking at those hidden beliefs that inform the results that you have today. There are habits that we all have that are culturally informed that will pull us off of our track over and over again. And I want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what those things are when they come up, so that you can stop those habits in their tracks and build new ones around the successful strategies that high achievers really have in their lifestyle. But ultimately, I just want to say that it's possible for you. I've seen many people do this work and overcome obstacles that they never imagined in their lifestyle, in their lives, that they would be able to overcome. And I know that I've talked a lot today about the strategies that you can use to get out of your own way and create lasting change in your work and your life. And I also know that change is hard. And so what I've done, I'm actually pretty excited, is that I've come up with ways to help you move beyond that. And so in knowing that how hard change is, I've developed a strategy session called the Plan for Success Strategy Session, where we can sit down one-on-one and really look at that one thing that really is holding you back and develop a plan to work beyond that. Look at what it looks like to work beyond that place. And I usually charge $500 for these Plan for Success strategy sessions, but because of this new online masterclass, I've opened up 6 new slots in my calendar that I would like to gift to you. I would like to give them to anybody who's on this call or listening to the recording, who feels like that might benefit them. It might help them, propel them forward. I would love to donate my time to you to see if taking this to the next step might be the right conversation for you to have right now. So, with that, if you're at all interested in this, I want to remember when we talked about being interested or committed to change. If you're interested, please, again, let me bless and release you. But if you're committed to change and you want to get going now, let's sit and let's have a conversation. And if you think that that might be one of you, I want to invite you to reach out to my assistant or myself. Her name is Monique at alchemyacademy.com. I think most of you got the link for this through her. And she can get you a link to my calendar in an open time slot for you. So we're going to do this for the first 6 people that reach out to her or to myself. And here's my email address. You can email me or Monique. She's got the same alchemyacademy.com email address. And for the first 6 people who we can fit into a time slot, then I'd be happy to have that conversation. I would just ask you to really be committed if you're the kind of person who is ready for change. That's the kind of conversation that I want to have. I'm actually going to send you, if you inquire about this, I'm going to send you a form to fill out that'll have you doing some of this work right away, thinking about some of these areas that you want to change. Because I'm interested in getting you started. I'm interested in getting you over the hump of just being interested, because that's where the magic happens and that's where the joy happens. And I would ask that if you were really to fill up one of those 6 slots, that if you actually follow through with it. You know, there will be more people who are interested in the replay for this. And, you know, I'd love to have some slots open for them. And what breaks my heart the most is when somebody signs up for a strategy session for me and then doesn't show up. And I know that that opportunity wasn't given to somebody who would have shown up and who would have been committed to that. So that's all I ask, is that only do this if you know that this might be the right time for you to change in your life. Otherwise, I look forward to speaking with you. And I just want to leave you with one final note, and that's a quote from Emily Dickinson, who says, to dwell in possibility. And that's what I want you all to leave today with, thinking about, that there's more available to you. And there's more out there that you can reach for when you're no longer holding yourself back. And I want to be your champion for doing that. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Thanks for managing when I went through the little technical difficulty at the beginning, but it's been a joy being here with you, and love bombs to everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.